My name is Gabriella Thompson, and I am 28 years old. After 4 years as an Army combat medic in Iraq, I never thought my most difficult battle would take place not on foreign soil, but back home, inside my own family. When I first heard that voicemail from my grandmother, Eleanor, her frail, wavering voice carried a desperation I had never heard before. Something inside me froze. I had patched men together under fire, sewn arteries with trembling hands while explosions rattled the air, but nothing could have prepared me for the way my chest tightened listening to her whisper. I pulled every string I could to get emergency leave, but even with all my training, nothing prepared me for what I would eventually walk into: an empty house, a dying woman, and the kind of betrayal that didn't just wound a family, it shattered it beyond recognition. And if you're watching this right now from a military family, I want you to understand, I know the feeling. I know how serving can make you feel like a stranger when you come back home, like your sacrifice was invisible to the very people you thought you were protecting. If that resonates, drop a comment and let me know where you're stationed, and hit subscribe, because the next part of this story is where everything unravels. The sand, the scorching heat, the constant vigilance of Iraq, those had become my normal. I had adapted to it, almost welcomed it. In my 4 years of deployment, I had seen the very worst of what humans could do to one another, but I had also seen courage, loyalty, and the kind of resilience that reshaped my soul. My unit had become my family. We didn't need to explain our nightmares to each other, or why we sometimes stared too long at nothing. They just knew. 3 weeks before my unexpected return, everything changed. Our convoy was hit. I can still smell the smoke when I close my eyes. Still hear the bone-shaking roar of the IED ripping apart the ground ahead of us. The Humvee in front of mine flipped like a toy, metal twisting in midair before crashing down in a storm of dust and screams. Contact, contact, someone yelled, but I was already moving. Training takes over before thought does. I grabbed my med bag, leapt from the vehicle, and sprinted straight into the chaos. Thompson, wait for cover, another voice barked, but there was no cover. Not for Martinez, not for Miller, not for the men bleeding out inside that wreckage. I remember flashes. Martinez's face pale as I dragged him out through the shattered windshield, the hiss of blood as I clamped Miller's leg and tightened a tourniquet, bullets sparking against twisted steel around us, the unbearable weight of Sergeant Collins as I hauled him over my shoulder, half stumbling, half running, until I got him behind the wreckage. All 4 survived that day. Later, Captain Reynolds told me it was nothing short of miraculous. Thompson, you have the steadiest hands in the worst situations, he said in the debriefing, his voice heavy but proud. Your quick actions saved lives today. I nodded, accepting the praise, but inside, I was hollow. Every mission, every explosion, every body pulled from wreckage, it stripped something away from me. Each time, I was left harder, sharper, but also somehow more breakable. That contradiction was something only my unit understood. I got my grandmother's voicemail during one of our rare quiet moments, sitting in the mess hall with a tray of food I barely touched. Her voice was faint, almost trembling. I'm sorry to bother you, sweetheart, she whispered. I know you are doing important work. I do not feel well. And your parents, they are not answering my calls. I will be fine. I love you, Gabriella. I replayed it 3 times, gripping the phone until my knuckles turned white. My grandmother never asked for help. She was strength personified, the same woman who raised my mother while my grandfather served in Vietnam, and later raised me while my parents disappeared on endless vacations. She never complained, never. The fact that she had called me, of all people, across oceans and war zones, that meant something was very, very wrong. Captain Reynolds noticed me sitting there, untouched food growing cold. He slid into the seat across from me, studying my face. Thompson, you look like you just got orders for another tour, he said quietly. What's going on? I told him, about the voicemail, about the way her voice cracked, about the dread coiled in my chest like barbed wire. He listened in silence, his jaw tightening with each word. Finally, he leaned forward. Family emergency leave exists for a reason. Start the paperwork. I'll push it through. But nothing in the Army is simple. Emergency leave required proof, documentation, signatures stacked on signatures. For 3 days, I tried to reach my parents, no answer. I called my grandmother back, silence. Every hour that passed, the dread grew heavier. Reynolds went above and beyond, calling in favors, using his reputation to cut through the red tape. Your record is exemplary, Thompson, he told me, gripping my shoulder. Sometimes you have to trust your gut. If you believe she needs you, that's reason enough. When the leave was finally approved, my unit gathered to send me off. They had been my world for 4 years, my family when blood ties felt distant. Specialist Garcia hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. Bring us back some real coffee, will you? This army sludge is killing me. Sergeant Collins, limping but alive because of me, clapped me on the back. Take care of your grandmother, Thompson, then get your ass back here in one piece. His voice was gruff, but his eyes betrayed what his words didn't. And then Captain Reynolds, he shook my hand like an officer, then pulled me into a brief, fierce embrace. Whatever you find, remember this, you have family here, too. We will see you both when we get back. The line went dead. For a moment, I just sat there staring at my phone, unable to move. Their words echoed in my ears like the final slam of a door. It wasn't just the coldness that shook me, it was the sheer indifference. My parents weren't ignorant. They knew the condition their mother was in. They knew I was here, scrambling to hold her life together, while they sipped margaritas on a beach in Mexico. This wasn't mere selfishness anymore. This was something darker. And I was going to uncover every piece of it. I dug through my grandmother's phone until I found a familiar name, Heather Jackson, RN, the home nurse. I pressed the call button with trembling hands, half praying she would answer. Hello? The voice on the other end was wary, exhausted. Miss Jackson? This is Gabriella Thompson, Eleanor Thompson's granddaughter. I'm a combat medic, home on emergency leave. I found my grandmother in terrible condition when I returned. I understand you were her nurse until recently? There was silence, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then Heather spoke again. Her voice weighted with guilt. Yes, I was, and I feel terrible about what happened. Is she alive? She's stable for now, I said, keeping my voice steady. In the ICU, but she was close to dying when I found her. Can you tell me why you stopped caring for her? Heather sighed so heavily I could almost see her shoulders slump. Your parents stopped paying me 6 weeks ago. I continued for another 2 weeks without pay because I was worried about her. But I have 2 children and bills of my own. I called your parents repeatedly. They kept giving me excuses, saying the payment was processing, or there were insurance delays. Eventually, I couldn't do it anymore. I clenched my jaw. Did they tell you they were going to Mexico? No, Heather said quickly, surprise in her tone. They told me they were tied up with business matters but would be checking on her daily. I left detailed instructions about her medications, her meals, her mobility schedule, everything. And your mother assured me another service would take over. She even told me not to worry, that everything was handled. I swallowed the rising anger. There was no other service. Heather's voice broke slightly. I was afraid of that. After securing her promise to provide a statement if necessary, I ended the call. By then, the doctors had reassured me that my grandmother would sleep through the night. That gave me time I intended to use. I drove back to her house, the old place that had once smelled of cookies and lavender. The place where I had done my homework as a child while she hummed old Sinatra songs in the kitchen. Now, as I stepped through the front door, it felt like walking into a mausoleum. I turned on the lights, one by one, forcing back the shadows. The silence pressed in, heavy and accusing. In the kitchen, a stack of mail teetered precariously on the side table. I shuffled through it, each envelope a gut punch. Past due, final notice, overdue, electric, water, property taxes, medical bills. None of it made sense. My grandfather had left her secure, more than secure. He had been a respected engineer, with an excellent pension and a carefully managed savings account. My grandmother should have been comfortable, not drowning in debt. That nagging dread hardened into something sharper, determination. I walked into the study, the heart of my grandfather's domain. His books still lined the shelves, history, engineering manuals, even the worn leather-bound Bible he had carried through Vietnam. The desk sat exactly where it always had, though now it was covered in paper. I spread them out across the polished wood. Bank statements with large withdrawals, all signed by my mother. Credit card bills with charges from expensive restaurants, boutique stores, and international travel agencies, things my grandmother never would have touched. Each page was another nail in the coffin of denial. My parents hadn't just been neglectful. They had been feeding like parasites, draining my grandmother's accounts while giving her barely enough to survive. My chest tightened, fury rising like bile, and then my eyes landed on it, the painting above the desk. The Colorado mountains, the place where my grandparents had honeymooned, my grandfather's favorite memory frozen in oil and canvas. And suddenly, memory surged. Years ago, after I had finished basic training, my grandfather had pulled me aside in this very room. "Gabriella," he had said, his weathered hand resting on my shoulder, "I want to show you something, just between us." He moved the painting aside, revealing a wall safe embedded into the plaster. "The combination is your birthday. If anything ever happens to me, and your grandmother needs help, you come here. Everything you need is inside." At the time, I'd thought it unnecessary. He was strong, invincible in my eyes, but 2 years ago, his heart had given out suddenly, in the storm of grief, in the chaos of funeral arrangements my parents commandeered, in my grandmother's quiet decline. I had forgotten, until now. Hands trembling, I pushed the painting aside. The safe was still there, waiting like a silent sentinel. I keyed in the numbers of my birthday, March 20th, 1997. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. Inside lay neatly arranged folders, a small metal box, and a USB drive. My heart lurched when I saw the handwriting on the label, neat and precise, unmistakably his. "For Gabriella, watch first." For a moment, I just stared at it, my throat tight. Even after 2 years, the ache of his absence was raw. William Thompson, my grandfather, my hero, had been a man of unshakable integrity, a Vietnam veteran who understood sacrifice, who had stood by me when my parents sneered at my decision to enlist. He had believed in me when no one else had. And now, from beyond the grave, he was speaking to me again. I reached out, my fingers brushing the USB drive. My pulse thundered in my ears. Whatever was on it, I knew, was going to change everything.